All praises to the PlayStation. Yeah!
Hi guys, welcome to the very first episode of the PraisePlaystation podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Ryan. Just let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 25 years old. I'm from Canada. I love video games. I love all things video games, and particularly, I'm a PlayStation gamer. So what I'm looking to do with this podcast is talk about all things PlayStation. News, games I like, just general topics, a bit of everything. So, being that this is the very first episode here, kind of go over the format I'm looking at a little bit here. So I figure I'll start with the biggest things in PlayStation news over the last week. Have a pick of the week for the games that have come out, and then go over kind of a generalized topic of the show, something to discuss in a little greater detail there. So, this being the very first episode, it seemed like the best thing to start with would be the top 5 games on the PS4 right now. So, let's get started. Start with news. So what I got so far this week, the PlayStation VR bundle is having a price drop starting September 1st. So for the headset and the camera, it's dropping to $399. For the Worlds bundle, that's a headset, camera, 2 moves, controller, and the VR Worlds game, it's dropping down to $449. So I did some looking at some numbers here, and I saw that the PSVR has actually hit 1 million sales as of June. I haven't found anything more recent than that, but I'm surprised, actually. I wouldn't have thought that it would have sold 1 million copies already. I don't personally have one. I don't really think there's any real killer games for it yet. I've heard it's the way to go for Resident Evil 7, which is a fantastic game, and I'm sure VR would bring that to the next level, but being that it's not exclusive, I don't think it's something that it's going to get people to go out and buy for it. Sony doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to supporting things like this, like the PlayStation Move in particular. They didn't support very well at all, so hopefully this will be different. I actually think they've done pretty well so far. It hasn't been out for a full year yet. So again, I'm really surprised by the numbers. A couple days ago here, Supermassive, the guys who did Until Dawn, released their release dates for 2 VR games they have coming. One's called The Impatient. It's a horror game as well with ties, kind of a bit of a prequel to Until Dawn. And another one called Bravo Team. It's a singular co-op shooter. One of those is coming out November 21st. That's The Impatient. And Bravo Team's coming out December 5th. Who knows? Maybe those will be the games that get me to buy a PSVR. I don't know. I really enjoyed Until Dawn. Thought that Supermassive did a great job with that. Absolutely. So we'll have to wait and see. The free PS Plus games for September have been announced. The big one is Infamous Second Son. A good game, a great game even. That was the last one Sucker Punch did. They haven't released anything since, which is kind of strange, but it was given PS4 Pro support last year when the Pro came out. And it's good if you like your superhero games. It does a very good job of making you feel powerful, giving you a good or evil choices, that kind of stuff. It's a little black and white that way. But it's still, to this day, it's one of the best looking games on PS4. And I do highly recommend it. I think it's a great pick for PS Plus. Next, we have the Riggs Mechanized Combat League, made by Guerrilla Cambridge. This is the next PS Plus game, free one for September. Again, I haven't played it, being that it's a VR game. The Metacritic's sitting at 78 right now, so not bad. I picked, especially being that it is a VR game itself, but I don't really have too much to say for that. The third one is Strike Vector EX. It's a multiplayer, third-person air combat kind of mech sort of game. It's sitting at a 75 on Metacritic, so it'd be kind of more of not like AAA like the Second Son is, but kind of its own thing. It seemed to actually review reasonably well. So for new games coming out this week, my pick of the week is actually Everybody's Golf. I don't know if you guys have anyone's played the Hot Shot series. This is what the Hot Shot was called, not in North America, so Japan, Europe, it was always known as Everybody's Golf. And this is the newest version. This will be the first one on the PS4, actually. And if you like arcadey golf games, you really can't do any better than the Hot Shot series, or Everybody's Golf in this case. I've put a few hours into it over the last couple days here, and it's good. It's really good. They've made some changes to the art style that I don't necessarily agree with. I feel like World Invitational, the last one in the series, kind of preferred that look a little more. They made some tweaks to the putting, but they're really pushing more online stuff this time. It's a little bit of an RPG light as well. There's more building of your character. You create your own character. I'm really enjoying it so far. It seems like it might turn into a bit of a grind. You only start with basically one course for the first little bit until you start unlocking some other stuff. So I feel like the more I play, the better it's going to get. But I am certainly enjoying it. There's a certain charm to these games, these Hot Shots games, that I don't know. It's tough to put your finger on. Okay, let's see here. So for our topic of the show, I wanted to talk about what I think are the best PS4 games right now. Now, of course, everyone has their own opinions. A game that came out 3 years ago that did really well back then may not be as good now. Like, times are always changing. Something like Destiny that had its problems, but was admittedly a good game and grew into an even better game. I can't exactly put on the list right now with Destiny 2 about to come out next week. It's going to be supplanted by that game, so there really isn't a point in like putting something like that on there, just as an example. So these are what I consider the 5 best games on PS4 right now. Number 5, I'm going to start with Bloodborne. So it's an action RPG made by From Software. I'm sure everyone's heard of the Dark Souls series or Demon Souls. Bloodborne is the PS4 exclusive that's kind of built in the same vein as that. It's very similar, runs on the same engine. I personally think that Bloodborne is the best jumping on point for those types of games. They've kind of diluted down the RPG mechanics a bit, made it a little less complex, so it's easier to get into. Don't get me wrong, it's still very difficult, and for that reason, I can't say that it's for everyone, because it's not, but you can't deny that it's very well made. The level design is excellent. These labyrinth levels that loop around and everything connects in a way you don't really expect sometimes. It all feels very organic and very well done. And it's very rewarding by having that that high difficulty. It really makes you feel like you've accomplished something. The game doesn't hold your hand at all. Everything you get is something you've earned yourself. And I feel like we've gotten a little too far away from that in gaming lately. So it's nice to have that challenge, that lack of hand-holding again. I highly, highly recommend Bloodborne. Everyone should at least try it. If it's not for you, it's not, but it's definitely worth a shot. It might really click with you. For number 4, I'm going to go with Overwatch. This is the only online exclusive game I'm going to put on this list. The reason I'm putting Overwatch on here is I think it's kind of, as of right now, the perfect online shooter for everyone. It's very accessible. Even if you're not necessarily the greatest at shooters, by playing like a support role, a medic role, a tank role, you can still be involved. Blizzard did a very good job of, I guess, just making it accessible for everyone. By not having kill death scores at the end of every match, you don't necessarily get the jabbing back and forth saying, hey, this guy didn't contribute, this guy didn't this, because the stats aren't as obvious, aren't as apparent. So I just think they did a really good job of encouraging teamwork and kind of getting rid of a lot of the nonsense that goes with online shooters. Being that it's made by Blizzard, they have a really good track record for supporting their games. Overwatch has had several updates by now, adding new maps, new game modes. Say what you want about the whole loot box thing. It's only cosmetic, so it doesn't really bother me too much. But I feel like Overwatch's biggest problem right now is the price. It's still priced as a full price game, and that's a little much for an online only game. That's just my opinion. The PC version's at $40 instead of the $75-$80 you can kind of get the console version at right now, and $40 would be about perfect, I think. But we'll see. Maybe there's a price drop coming. Still, if you're into online FPSs, I think Overwatch is your best bet right now just because of the player base. It has a very good player count, and it's going to be supported for a long time to come with that trademark like Blizzard polish and personality. And for number 3, I'm going to choose Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. This is essentially the perfect swan song to Nathan Drake's story. If you've played the first 3 games, obviously you should be playing this one because it wraps everything up perfectly. I think Naughty Dog, who's probably, if not the best developer of the last 10 years, really hit it out of the park with this one. This is one of their best games. I don't know if I'd say it's as good as The Last of Us, but they definitely learned a lot from that game. There's a much bigger emphasis on stealth here. The writing's improved. Everything's kind of a bit darker without being too dark. Uncharted 3 had its issues where it was very, very linear. There's a lot of stuff where you would literally just essentially hold forward on the analog stick, and that was about it. Drake would do his stuff, and you just kind of wander down your path, and some cinematic stuff would happen, and it's all very cool, but from a gameplay perspective, it wasn't that interesting, I guess. I feel Uncharted 4 does a much better job of opening things up a bit. The combat scenarios are much larger. By adding the grappling hook, they made you more mobile, which gives you different angles to attack from. It's very well done, and really no one does script writing, acting, voice acting, all that stuff as well as Naughty Dog. They're literally in a league of their own at this point, and it's excellent. I really can't say too much bad about it. I wish the story ended a little darker. The whole way through, they kind of made it seem like they were going for a much darker tone, and that Nathan was finally going to get his comeuppance, and it didn't really happen. So things wrapped up nicely at the end, but I do think everyone should definitely play this game. It's excellent. Number 2, a game that's gotten heaps upon heaps of praise, The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt. It's an action RPG and a massive, massive game. It's a few years old at this point, but still the art style holds up wonderfully. It's a beautiful, beautiful game. There's been tons of updates to it. They've kind of cleaned up all the technical problems they had at launch. There's been, I believe, two big DLCs that have added even more content. Like, you're looking at hundreds upon hundreds of hours of content if you want to do everything, and it's all good too. Like, usually when you get games this big, there's lots of filler stuff, and while The Witcher has that, the smart writing of the quests and kind of the interactions and the darker tone of the world itself kind of really makes it seem more polished than some of the bigger RPGs are. It's a massive, massive game, and you can really tell it's a labor of love from CD Projekt Red. It's pretty crazy to think that they've only made 3 games, I believe, at this point, just strictly the Witcher series. And they've come a long ways from the first one, that's for sure. Number 1, I'm going to call this the best game on PS4 right now, Horizon Zero Dawn. This is made by Guerrilla Games, who did the Killzone series that I also really enjoyed, but I didn't really think they were going to be able to pull off an RPG like this, being Killzone was obviously shooters, first-person shooters, and they had cool atmosphere and such, and Guerrilla's always been pretty far ahead on the graphics forefront. Them and Naughty Dog are kind of the best around, I think, on the PS4 anyways. But yeah, they really nailed this one. I had heard good things about it, and I was a little late getting to it, actually. But I knew the gameplay was going to be good. I knew it was going to look really good. It runs wonderfully on the PS4 Pro. It's probably the best looking game on the console right now. And I didn't expect the story to hook me as much as it did. Like, I threw a couple curveballs early on that kind of shocked me a little bit, and I don't know. I guess it's kind of hard to put my finger on exactly what it is, but I guess it's the way they kind of drip feed the story to you. They make you a little bit curious and kind of give you little bits here and there to kind of inch you along and make you want to find out what happens. And the writing, I wouldn't say is necessarily up to, say, Naughty Dog standards or what CD Projekt Red did with The Witcher, but it is very good as well. I think the best thing I can say for Horizon is that even though it's a big RPG, don't get me wrong, it's not nearly as big as, say, The Witcher, but it still manages to feel personal and focused. The Witcher and Uncharted are basically two completely opposite ends of the gaming spectrum. You have the massive, non-linear, ambitious game of The Witcher, and Uncharted, which is very much linear. You follow a set path. There's no choices. The story is very much, well, linear. Horizon kind of finds a nice middle ground where the game is open, you have lots of choices, but it doesn't get kind of bogged down in its own size. The narrative stays on the forefront. The main thread is very interesting, keeps you interested. It's I just feel like it finds that perfect middle ground between being big enough to kind of capture your imagination and get things going, but being small enough that it stays focused and is kind of less buggy than the bigger games and makes it feel more, I guess, personal, more AAA. Like the combat here is fantastic, and I can't really say the same about The Witcher. I enjoyed The Witcher's combat a lot, but this is just on a whole nother level. But it still gives you that freedom that you want from an open world RPG. I think at this point, I can be pretty confident in saying that Horizon Zero Dawn is the best game on PS4 right now. Guerrilla really hit it out of the park with this one, absolutely. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. That's it for this episode. Obviously, it's the first episode, so there's going to be lots of changes to come, but give me some feedbacks. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. And just please subscribe if you think this is going to be something that you'll be interested in listening to. I'm planning on doing these weekly. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening, and I hope to see you soon.
Stop dwelling on empty words. Stop stalling in the doorway.
Both the intro and outro are from the same song. It's called Whole by Chime and Adam Tell. This music was provided by No Copyright Sounds. They can be found on YouTube.